Hello everybody, welcome to History of UNIX C, GNU and Linux. I've been developer for over 20 years and C has always been my favorite language. Meet me and my friend Muzaffar. Okay, let's start. Multics was a time-sharing operating system that initiated in 1964 between MIT, AT&T, and General Electric. Multics was written in PL1 assembly language for GE645 mainframe, and that mainframe was especially designed for Multics. Actually, Multics was not a very successful project, but due to its many novel and valuable ideas, it has a significant impact on computer science and the operating system after Multics. From AT&T, Ken Thompson and colleagues from Bell Lab are participated in this project, but AT&T was pulled out from this project, and project was continued between MIT and General Electric. Today, this project is open source and web source are available on MIT repository for Multics project. And then the Ken Thompson and colleagues from that project, Multics project, came back to Bell Lab in AT&T. That day, Ken Thompson was created a video game, but there was a little problem. It doesn't have operating system to run his game, so he started to create operating system. There was a PDP-7 machine in AT&T Bell Lab that days, and Ken Thompson started to create operating system for this machine, and he doesn't want to use original operating system from PDP-7. So he and his colleagues, Dennis Ritchie, Brian Kernighan, and some other scientists, started to create UNIX operating system. That days, there wasn't efficient high-level programming language for these teams to create UNIX, so they decided to create it with assembly language. So UNIX was created with assembly language for PDP-7 machine. That days UNIX was very innovative because they created some concept, designed and created some concept for UNIX. Concept, for example, first 3-layer OS model. They created the UNIX in 3 different layers. First is kernel of operating system, and then shell, and then utilities. Nowadays, these models are used by any other operating system, for example, Windows, Mac, and Linux, and other things. So they created kernel, shell, for example, terminal to communicate with kernel, and utility for use kernel. And then they using pipeline to share data between program. Then they created file hierarchy system and using greater than to send data output to file instead of terminal, and read with smaller than to read from files instead of keyboard. And then Ken Thompson started to create B language because they need the programming language to create utility for UNIX. But the B programming language itself inspired by BCPL. I will tell you more about this chain of inspiring programming language in next slides. But D was not sufficient enough and not efficient enough for doing programming in UNIX, because the PDP-7 and next PDP-11 has a small RAM, and they need a very efficient programming language to use this RAM. So after Ken Thompson created B, then Dennis Ritchie, his colleagues, started to improve B and create C programming language in 1972 to create program for Unix. And then in 1974, C was rich enough to rewrite whole Unix with new programming language. So Dennis Ritchie rewrite Unix with C instead of assembly language. The C is low level enough to write operating system, and the same is high enough to write utilities. After this time, every operating system using C for programming. So after creating Unix and after creating C by Ken Thompson and colleagues, Dennis Ritchie, Brian Kernighan, and other scientists. So in 1983, Richard Stallman started or announced Project GNU. GNU is recursion for GNU is not Linux. He decided to create operating system that was free for everyone to watch source and modify source and share source between users. So that days Unix was not open source. The Unix source was belonged to AT&T and some other university and some government agency. So Stallman started GNU project, but there was a problem. The kernel of GNU wasn't ready until 1991. In 1991, Linus Trovalds created kernel for GNU project. Its name is Linux. Trovalds started kernel because GNU kernel was not ready, and if at that time GNU kernel was ready, of course Linus Torvalds doesn't need to start this project. This kernel is written in C. It's Unix-like. It means it's completely works just like Unix, but doesn't use Unix code, and the code was completely right from scratch. So let's review these slides. Our story was started with FORTRAN. FORTRAN is grandfather of C and many other languages. It's created in 1957, and then ALGOL in 1958 was created, and then CPL, and then in 1964 Multics project was initiated, if you remember. And then in 1967 BCPL language inspired by CPL, that go to FORTRAN, it's created, and then in 1969 UNIX project and the same times B programming language was initiated in AT&T Bell Lab by Ken Thompson. And then in 1972 C programming language was created by Dennis Ritchie, and in 1974 Unix version 4 was created or rewritten by C, and after that C become the operating system language and system level language, and many other code and language was written in C. And then in 1983 GNU project was started to create complete operating system with open source. And then in 1987 Minix project was created by professor of operating system Tannenbaum to share knowledge with students, and that was not completely open source, but the source was educational purpose only. And then in 1989 the first standard version of C was released by ANSI, and then with ISO, and after that the old standard C version was published by ISO. And then in 1991 the Linux was created by Linus Trovalds and published under GNU Linux name in 1992. So GNU project now it's complete with kernel of Linux and the shell and utility from GNU. And in 1999 C99 was released and C11 to 11, and then C18 in 2018 years was released. C programming language inspired many other languages. So for example, it's inspired Objective-C, inspired C++. Both Objective-C and C++ added object-oriented programming to C. C by default is not object-oriented, it's functional programming language. And then Java, and then C# by Microsoft, and then Go by Google, created by inspiring from C. And then why C is important? The first is because of C itself. It's very simple and very small. Small, I mean, there are a few reserved words in C. C is a strong type. C is portable. You can compile every C program with a little change or almost nothing change to any other machine, and C is very efficient because created to be efficient, because the machine that they worked on has a little RAM and the resource, and they need the programming language to be very efficient. And C has memory management. In C you can use pointer and use memory and create dynamically memory, and then C is compiler based, and C was compiled and then run. Because of that it's very fast. And the other reason is C is language of operating system like Unix, Linux, Minix, Windows kernel, Mac OS kernel. Every operating system was written in C, not every but almost every, written in C, and I think no one want to change them because C was very good enough. And many other system level programs are written in C. For example, web servers, database engines, web servers. For example, Nginx, Apache, they written in C, and database engine, PostgreSQL, and many other written in C. And C is good programming language for embedded system, and used in industrial field for program microcontroller and AVR and something like that. And the other thing is C inspiring language. Many other languages inspired by C, as you see in previous slides. So if you learn C, you can learn any other language easily. So thanks to watching these videos, and if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks and bye.